mighty ocean. Your eyes see everything. The slightest of your motions can make the continents ring. Yet in all your mighty glory, vanished from the skies, leaving just another story midst millions of man-made lies. They tell of how you fell down the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas, and my guests today are Bruce Curtis and VK Herman, who I have always called and referred to as Grandma. Hello, Grandma, how are you?
Well, I'm fine, but I'm not. My name is VKDurham, but my married name is Herman. And the reason why I use Durham is because Russell and I never co-mingled our properties.
Okay, I will make that correction. Now, your husband, Mr. Herman, was working with you, and you came into his life, and he was murdered over this Durham Trust.
It was a long story. I had known Russell since I was 15 and a half years old. Can you hear me all right now?
It's a little bit. There's a little bit of static, and no, it's not. The volume is not as much as it could be.
How's that?
Yes, ma'am. That's better.
Okay. No, Russie and I had met when I was 15 and a half years old. And so we didn't marry until late in 1987. But Russell he was one of the president's men. And he was the contra account holder. But ultimately, they thought that Russell owned what I own in the trust, and they murdered him. And thinking he did own it, and no, he didn't. There's nowhere in the title instruments can you find his name.
And 5 years later, his signature was forged 5 years after he died. Is that correct?
No, it was 4 years.
4 years, okay.
Yeah, it was 4 years. The Bush and Clinton group and the Eggers, with an agreement with Greenspan and the Federal Reserve, they did forge Russell's signature and notarize it 4 years after his death, and they filed the papers out in Las Vegas. But the papers are just only a history of what I own.
Okay, now let me stop you here for just a moment. What we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the Durham Trust. Now, VK, would you explain what the Durham Trust is? It's been in your family for over 100 years.
Yes, it has. It's been in the family since 1876.
Go ahead. Please enlighten my audience about this. I've been following you and talking to you for almost 20 years now, so I'm pretty familiar with it. You go ahead, please.
Well, it's a funny thing how this thing came about. When I was living in California, a friend of mine who was an antique dealer, she says, "Hey, VK," she said, "would you like to go down to Los Angeles with me to an auction?" And I said, an antique auction, and I said, "Sure." And I said, you'll give me back income, won't you? She says, "Yeah." I said, "I sure as hell don't know where I am, because I just got to California." Well, we drove down to Los Angeles, and we went to an antique auction down there, and as I was looking around, over on the table, Clay, I saw a huge old leather-bound Bible with brass straps. And I said to my friend, I said, you know, I've only seen one other Bible like that. And I said, that was my grandmother's Bible. Well, Granddad, great-grandfather, had given both of the sisters, grandmother and Lady Sarah, had given them both the Bible. And the Bibles were printed in 1874. And so anyway, this Bible, I wound up having to write a check for it to my friend. I didn't have the money with me. And to post-date a check for $175. I bought it, and in the back was the old slip vellum. And in that vellum was the contract and the certificate of indebtedness of Peru. And it's still valid. It's number 181. It's been certified. So Rusty and I, when he came to California, and he and I, after we got married, we were sitting around the house one day, and I had it hanging on the wall. It was framed, and I said, isn't that a pretty thing? And he said, it sure is. He said, you know, sometimes those old certificates have been found to be very valuable. And I said, oh, come on. I said, I think it's just a pretty antique, just like that. Well, he took it down to the Federal Reserve, or to the Central Intelligence Secretarial Services down in La Jolla. He had it calculated per the contract. And that darn thing, and it turned out to be so, and he had it calculated per the gold bullion prices. Well, you know, the gold bullion prices that were so high at that time that we thought, well, we'd just take it and split it out and split the difference, because we knew there was going to be some gold problems somewhere down the line. But anyway, they calculated that thing, Clay, and it came out to close to $207 quadrillion. And that was only on 1.7%.
That's more, Grandma, that's more than the estimated wealth of the Rothschilds.
Well, it's more, well, I don't know, they keep trying to steal mine.
Yes.
But they haven't had any luck yet.
But, okay, now, you found this, between you and Russell, you took it down, you got it verified by the government, right?
Russell didn't have a darn thing to do with it now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'd attaching Russell Herman to my property.
Okay, sorry about that, ma'am. You just said he took it before the CIA, that's all.
He took it down to the CIA, and later we took it down, or it was taken down to the West Coast Federal Reserve Bank for recalculation. Well, see, if you remember, in 1998, the Fed finally were able to reconcile their West Coast banking books. Well, when they calculated that in 1988-89, it threw the Federal Reserve's computers off, and they couldn't reconcile their banking business until 98. And that was right in the middle of Clinton's impeachment trial. But now 24% of this, I'm correct, aren't I, Bruce?
That's correct.
24% of this it goes to the republics that have regained their 10th Amendment sovereignties. Now, Russell, when he saw what was happening, when I saw what was happening, we couldn't figure out what to do with all this calculation, so we decided we'd set up our wills. And the wills were interchangeable. It would either be my will or his will. We could just insert our names depending on which one of us passed first. So anyway, Rusty went first. Well, Illinois would never let that will be probated. They just decided they were going to use it all on their own. Well, I've never authorized I'm the only one that's got signatory power on this thing. And I never authorized any usage of it. And now, through all of this stuff that's been going on, Clay, what you are seeing is you're seeing a global debt that can't be resolved because everyone put out bogus, fraudulent instruments. They did it, used Prince Bandar and groups of people. It just boggles one's mind. And right now, if you look at what's going on, the Homeland Defense is going to go through people's bank deposit boxes, trying to gather up all the equity they can gather up for every piece of property that's owned, anything you got a title to, your birth certificate, whatever else, and they're going to confiscate it because they can't pay their damn debt. The Federal Reserve can't, and that's where the problem is, Clay.
Well, the Federal Reserve itself is fraudulent. Your trust predates this the Federal Reserve, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Now,
we are free Federal Reserve. We are not subject to the Security Exchange laws. We are exempt under Rule 144A. You know, and all I say is, where do they get their jurisdiction? They have no jurisdiction. They have no jurisdiction over this trust.
all right.
The only laws that are applicable to this trust are the laws at the time of contract. That's not my law. That's the laws of that's the laws of nations.
All right.
That's the law of the land.
I've had some thoughts. I've been thinking about this all night. I had a very good interview yesterday about a new service out of Germany, but it's connected with Switzerland. So I'll talk to you about that later. Bruce, let me bring you in for a minute, sir. Your grandma's goal here, and mine, totally unrelated, coming from totally different viewpoints here, but is to restore the republic. You know, I said I've been labeled as anti-government for 20 some odd years. I'm not anti-government. I'm the most pro-government guy you'd have out there if it's the government guaranteed us by the Constitution.
Okay, excuse me, Jim.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a problem here.
What's that?
All of this fraud that has gone on with the Federal Reserve and this Commander Hatam mess, a.k.a. the Eckers, a.k.a. the Saudis,
okay.
a.k.a. Princess Now, just a moment, let me finish. We're going to hear the greatest swishing sound you ever heard in your life as they collapse everything that's in these states of the Union. They're going to collapse it. What we've got to do is to plug that hole and stop this nonsense. We've got to get people back to work. We've got to restore our industry, our manufacturing. We've got to get a hold of this farm issue. We've got to get this housing issue. We've got to get the health issue, hospitals, education. We've got to get and the pensions. They're laying off policemen because they don't have the funds in these states to run these infrastructures. We've got to plug the hole. The trust stands ready, willing, and able to issue the credit, but the states themselves must monetize and securitize. We don't need to go to China to get any backing. We don't need to go to Germany and get any backing, France, or any other of those. We do it in-house. We do it in-house.
The 10th Amendment movement in the states is very heavy here. A lot of states are stepping up to the plate on this. Bruce, you want to add to this? You know?
Oh yeah, I think this is a critical point because one of the stipulations in the trust is that you have to take an oath to the original Constitution, and these states, in taking an oath to the original Constitution, have to realize that the Union was composed of free republics. The Union did not create the republics. The republics created the Union.
Yes.
And so what we have this big illusion now of this United States, which is a corporation. If you look into federal code, you'll see the United States is defined as a corporation. So if somebody tells you, do you live in the United States? You can truthfully say, no, I don't live in that 10-mile square of Washington, D.C. But through artifice, the lawyers, bar agents, have extended the federal territory onto the republic. Through the zip code, through other artifices of law, they have basically climbed on top of the states, and now the states are finally tired of it. You have governors like Jan Brewer down in Arizona. You have governors like the new governor of Wisconsin. The new governor of Maine is ready to declare it a republic. New Hampshire is looking at going on the gold standard. We have about 10 states working on the gold standard, 38 states working on 10th Amendment objections to this very draconian corporation that we like to call the United States. So we are, as VK likes to say, we're in a mill of a hess. And we've got to come out of it. The only way to come out of it properly is for the states to redeclare themselves as republics and get away from this corporate government, corporate courts, corporate legislatures, corporate this, corporate that. Get back to republics. And then the trust can properly put the collateral behind each republic. So we have right now about 4 or 5 of them are getting ready for meetings with the governor. Maine in particular is leading the pack. They've already, the treasurer of Maine has already inspected the documents of the trust. The AG, they're getting ready for a meeting with the Attorney General, and I would say Maine is out in front of the pack in really evaluating what to do, the steps to take that VK has laid out. Is that a good assessment for you, VK?
Well, I think you should go further. The mortgage is filed record, and which you have a copy of. And the mortgage is the financial structure, the background for the Deo Givante Trust. That's Deo, D-E-O, small j, small u, and Vante, capital V-A-N, V as in Victor, A-N, T as in Thomas, E as in Edward. Now that means God is willing. Now, we have 2 sub-trusts set up under the Durham Parent Trust, which hold the 24% for the republics and 24% for Latin America. Now we have additional collateral, which we can issue out credit for those countries who have had a heck of a time, who have really been taken advantage of by this Federal Reserve and Hatan mints. Now, you know, this was pretty hairy. They put out, now I want you to think of how they did this. They put out up an agreement where they were going to split 50-50 with the Eckers.
Okay, now just a moment. You mentioned the Eckers, you mentioned Hatan. Let me give my audience a little bit of reference point. Back when I started the Free American, there was another magazine started called Contact out of Las Vegas, and again, it's one of these propaganda arms. Hatan was supposedly a giant space creature, but they had a lot of they put a lot of truth into the magazine that they siphoned off of patriot movements. Is that fairly accurate? They were the Contact was owned or run by E.J. and Doris Ecker.
Yes, it was, and they were operatives. They were Iranian agents that were operating here in the United States. They were the ones that were funding the Al-Qaeda down in the Philippines. And they had the people thinking that this Commander Hatan was going to come over in a big spaceship and beam them up and take them off the face of the earth so that they could get rid of the fanning battles that were coming. Well, people have left, I don't know how much money to those people. When they left California, that house in Tehachapi, down in the basement, there was it was the gold coins, etc., that was down in that basement, left there as the Eckers flew off to the Philippines, was uncountable. It's never been documented. I don't know where it went, but that's where it was. Now, what you've got is a glorious scam that was actually, I believe, backed by the black hats over at CIA. Because they had too much relevant information that could be, they could put enough good information in there to make the bad believable.
Right. Now, good propaganda is 90% contains the truth, according to Goebbels.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. And
Now, is this, Bruce, is what Grandma wants with the republics, I totally agree with. Do you have that in writing that you presented to the states? To the governors?
Each state, of course, each state is a separate republic, so it's up to each committee that's making a presentation to lay out the facts to the best of their ability. Now, we have recommended that these various states go in, and that the representatives go in and show the dire problem. The problem is going with the federal government's plan. The federal government's plan is to bankrupt these states. That's quite obvious. It began with CBS. CBS ran a 15-minute special. You can watch the video. DK posted the video. CBS said that the states are in worse trouble than the federal government, probably. And then about 2 weeks later, the federal government started putting out the propaganda that they have a plan to maybe help the states by creating a form of bankruptcy where they could get out of the pension obligations and get out of a lot of the obligations that were holding the states back. So what they're going to create is a condition where even more people are put on the street, even more people are put out of their homes and don't have the money to feed the family or put the kids through school. And, it's, yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me, Clay, you and I were on deck with this Patriot Sons and Daughters of Liberty, etc., back whenever we lost 2.4 million family farms. We lost over 97 million families lost their homes. Now you figure that's 2.5 persons per household that was put on the street. You and I have been there, Clay. We watched this happen once before, and it's doing it all over again, and everything they've done is illegal as it can be.
I remember Dr. Eugene Schroeder leading a tractor drive when farmers drove up to Washington, D.C. to protest this attack on the family farm.
Oh, yeah. And what replaced the family farm?
Corporate farms. Plank number 9 on the Communist Manifesto.
You got a bunch of Japanese out there, syndicates. You got Arab syndicates. You got whatever out there in New Mexico, in Nevada, with farms that are and feedlots that are so big your eye can't see that far. And yet they attack the American farmer. They attack the... You know, it would be nice to have a damn federal government that would attack the people that are attacking this country and protect the American citizens.
All right, do you have...
And quit allowing all of these Freddie the freeloading immigrants in here that destroy everything that we have.
They flood the immigrants in here. They run the drugs up here with the immigrants. The CIA was responsible for the Eckers. They were responsible for Operation Watchtower. They were responsible for Iran-Contra. They were responsible for murdering your husband. And they've been playing this game for 100 years here.
Well,
let's not forget the objective has been to destroy the country. The objective of the Trojan government, namely the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, injected itself into the government for the strict purpose of destroying this country and impoverishing the people. That's what we're looking at.
Well, I have something to say. You said about the murdering Russell. Yes, they did murder Russell. But they thought Russie owned something he didn't own. Well, then they went around the world and they started counterfeiting U.S. debt obligations. Right now, that's over $107 quadrillion. How did we get to that figure? That figure is where they were going to use 50% of the accrued interest, and then the Federal Reserve and all who were working with the Eckers were going to split 50-50 all the money's taken down offshore. Well, offshore, you've got Hillary Clinton, you've got George Bush, you've got the Pilgrim Society, you've got all up in the Grand Cayman accounts called the Giga accounts. I've already put the account numbers up there. This has got to be the most flagrant abuse I have ever heard of. It's unparalleled in history. When a group such as this can take American taxpayers' dollars and take somebody else's property and go to the roulette wheel, i.e. Forex, which is a CIA-based entity, and play the roulette wheels with tax dollars, with somebody else's property.
Grandma, let me just interrupt you. You know, I don't know why Americans, this is on mainstream news, why can't Americans see that these Federal Reserve, the people that are pulling strings on the Federal Reserve, basically took $2 trillion that George Bush gave them to bail out the banks that own the Federal Reserve, and what did they do? They ended up confiscating, repossessing over 1 million American homes because all your jobs have been sent overseas or given to a bunch of illegals here.
Well, let me top that one. This is going to be a can you top this today. Okay? Back in 2003, May 21st, I entered into an oral agreement to pay the debt for the United States and the American continent, which was $6.5 trillion. I said, oh, hell, y'all, I'll just write the collateral. We'll get that out of here, but I'm going to put a condition in there where they've got to return all the mortgages back to the people and the water rights and everything else. So, and everything that George Bush sold off in Executive Order 12803. Well, they took that payment, rolled it for a year and a day, played the European stock market, and the Europeans couldn't figure out where in the hell the Americans came up with all that money to play the markets. Well, then in 2004, all of a sudden, dear old J.P. Morgan. Anybody know J.P. Morgan? You know who that bunch of thieves are?
Oh yeah, the ones that ripped off all the technology and took away free electricity and gave us a bunch of electric lines running across America.
And a bunch of these damn windmills that are out there killing our eagles.
That's right.
But anyway,
can't have one on your house. Now we got to sell this. We got to sell this, and you know, we got to sell this to American people. Go ahead.
In 2004, I want to show you how crooked these bastards are. And yeah, I said bastards, kids. J.P. Morgan, when he found out that this trust had the instruments that were issued out by the Financial House of Peru, a.k.a. Hobson and Hurtado, on May 1st, 1875, 129 years later, in 2004, J.P. Morgan goes way back and brings it forward and incorporates that old house, that Financial House of Peru, and brings it under J.P. Morgan's corporation. And you know, I hate to tell Jamie Dimon this, but Jamie, you don't own it. You're a fraud, kid. Just like you were a fraud whenever you asked me to put those instruments down at Bank One. And then you tried to poison me. You're a fraud. You're a fraud.
So
anything.
What we're trying to do here is restore the solvency to the states, make the states. I mean, if we were producing, we did this in World War I, folks. We did it in World War II. We produced here. We had the factories going. We had the farms running. In the Depression, 30% of the American people lived and worked on farms.
I'll be more than willing to put up the credit for Detroit. We can thank Bill Clinton for getting them tax write-offs to send them down to Arkansas, but I'll be more than